Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Assalamu alaikum. We extend our greetings to the entire distinguished community during this blessed time of Ramadan, a month of grace and contentment for all who belong to the community of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We give thanks to Allah, who said, "La in shakartum la azidannakum." If you are grateful, I will surely increase you in favor. Allah has decreed that we show gratitude to Him and seek an increase in His blessings upon us. This is why we are here with you today, and we aim to continue these teaching sessions. This is made possible by the grace of the Prophet ﷺ and by the grace of the one who taught us the greatness of the Messenger of Allah, our Master, Mawlaya Shaykh Ahmed ibn Muhammad At-Tijani Sharif radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. This year, in 2025, we plan to address the lessons of Ramadan under the theme of the science of Allah. When it comes to studying the Almighty, each person attempts to introduce a spiritual understanding that aligns with their own level of spiritual elevation. This is why, in the study of Allah, we use a synthesis of His aspect of uluhiyah, divinity, while relying on one's own mystical dimension, as this is the approach Allah Himself has established. Allah created beings unequally, endowing each with a level of understanding suited to them. In this context, He used the expression قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا عُتِيتُمْ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا خَلِيلًا. Say, the Spirit is of the affair of my Lord, and you have not been given of knowledge, except a little. Indeed, when commenting on the divinity of Allah, some use what is called infused science, while others rely on a synthesis to explain the realm of divinity, and yet others adopt an approach based on His absolute reality. If you refer to all the dimensions mentioned earlier, there is a domain that remains exclusive to Allah. This aspect, which belongs to Him uniquely, without any external interference, is what is referred to as divine reality. In this context, all interpretations are limited exclusively to the divine realm. In this regard, an essential question arises. In this sphere that belongs to the divine realm, if Allah introduces the soul of an akhtab, a great spiritual pole, or a prophet, and this soul, immersed in the divine realm, is called upon to project its vision into the divine reality to interpret it for us, then what knowledge does this soul use to respond to this call? I say that this is the moment of choice, where each person selects the knowledge that suffices for their interpretation. As for me, the knowledge that suffices and that I choose is what I call the science of Allah. There is a reality that Allah has taught us, and that the Quran has revealed publicly so that we may grasp its meaning. Through these verses, the Quran unveils the Nuraniyu, luminous dimension of the Lord, the sphere where He teaches us His essence through His light, as expressed in the verse, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. This verse alone is sufficient as a basis for our interpretation. Thus, we study His light in the celestial framework, and when He mentions the heavens with their various luminous manifestations, we realize that what is revealed to us corresponds to the 7 known heavens. However, there are other heavens that he has folded and stored, whose existence has not been disclosed. Similarly, if we project this study into the earthly framework, we observe that there are also lands that he has veiled and hidden, unknown to the general public. If the Lord teaches us, Allahu nur samawati wal ardi, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, and we are to comment on what I call the science of Allah, then this means, following the divine line of teaching he has suggested regarding the 7 known heavens, while acknowledging that there are others he has unfolded without revealing them, and still others he has folded and stored without disclosing them. I adopt the same approach for the earthly framework, where he has announced the existence of 7 lands, while knowing that there are lands he has unfolded without revealing them, as well as others he has folded and stored without disclosing them. Before engaging in the process of their revelation, which Allah has measured within His Nurani framework, should I not limit myself to His science? This is a question I ask myself. Should I not limit myself to His science, which is encompassed by His light? It is in this quest that I have introduced a synthesis, placing it within a dialectical framework. Why a dialectical framework? Because in these revealed terms, coded words have been inserted, and this dialect has not deciphered their meaning. This dialect has drawn these coded terms from the knowledge of Allah, which has projected itself from the divine realm to unveil His reality. In this structure, the framework corresponding to the lowest dimension is that of Basatul Jalal, the extension of majesty, or the layer of light above the 7th heaven. Yet, it is precisely this framework that the Quran refers to in these terms, Khaba khawsayni aw adna, the distance of 2 bows or closer. Thus, it becomes evident that the intense projection necessary to understand the synthesis associated with the science of Allah can only be interpreted through inner vision. This inner vision brings me to a fundamental concept known as Ismuzati, which is none other than Allah. When one accesses the interior of this name, one sees the definition it carries, extracted from the heart of His reality. This definition brings us back, once again, to the dialect I mentioned earlier. For this dialect has announced a reality it has not yet deciphered, because the one expressing this reality did not speak plainly, but hinted at it.
xam nga li mu joxoñoon di junji.
What he expressed in coded language is that he placed the name Allah in a distinct sphere, turning toward the divine reality. He addressed this reality with the phrase Buhuri karrashfi bimunzil ahad, awaiting interpretation. After positioning Allah in a specific framework, he projected his inner vision to contemplate the divine reality. In this state, he uttered the phrase Buhuri karrashfi bimunzil ahad in an esoteric dialect. This process led him to use the same terms as the Almighty, in accordance with what I mentioned previously, until the Lord proclaims, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. Why does he use the phrase Buhuri karrashfi bimunzil ahad? In the realm of infused science, he claims to have seen a sea. Through this infused science, he perceived what is referred to as the sea in his inner vision. But in mystical science, he sees a sea that divides. In spiritual science, he perceives the light emanating from Haqiqatul Munzil. However, in the science of Allah, his inner vision rises above luminous manifestations to contemplate only His oneness. This is why he introduces the first science, infused science, referring to the sea as Buhuri. Then, he presents the second science, which sees a fragmented structure expressed through karrashfi. Next, he mentions the perception of al-haqiqatul munzil, hence the term munzil. Finally, he speaks of the contemplation of Allah's oneness, which justifies the use of ahad. However, understanding this progression is challenging due to the four coded terms. First, by sea, then by a sea which fragments, then by haqiqatul munzil, and finally by the absolute oneness of the Lord. The ultimate goal of this framework is to define Allah for us. It means that if we study the Lord in His reality, we must adhere to what He has taught us to grasp it more easily. For example, when Allah says, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, He has appointed representatives to illuminate the heavens and the earth. However, this illumination occurs through the greatness of the Lord, which is why these chosen ones are called the caliphs of Allah. Their ability to illuminate comes solely from His grace, and their guidance is only by His divine favor. When we consider the divine environment, and the soul of an akhtab contemplates, a particular phenomenon occurs. In deep contemplation, he claims that the realm it inhabits surpasses the metaphor of the sky. When asked why, he responds, because I'm immersed in it. Similarly, he says, the realm surpasses the metaphor of the earth, explaining, because I have moved beyond it. When questioned further, since you are immersed in the realm of the unseen, ghaib, how do you define yourself? He introduces the coded phrase, Buhuri karrashfi bimunzil ahad. He says he saw a sea with waves exceeding any conceivable height. But if you interpret this sea as a physical entity, you are mistaken. As in his state, he no longer perceives material reality. Therefore, when he speaks of waves of immense height, he is not referring to a physical phenomenon. If your understanding limits this sea to a material entity, his inner vision surpasses you, as he is in a realm where matter is no longer perceptible. Then, what sea is he referring to? It is a metaphorical sea, representing the throne of Allah, known as Kursiyu, and its indescribable grandeur. This is why he says he was awestruck by this sea. It is not a physical sea. The waves he contemplates are such height that they defy human measurement. In this realm, human instruments and references become irrelevant, as it is a spiritual reality perceived through inner vision. He uses the metaphor of the sea to convey his perception and help us understand the nature of the sea and its waves, all while interpreting the supreme name Allah. When asked, you are immersed in the divine realm, contemplating the supreme reality. How did this sea appear to you through your vision? He replies, the way this sea manifested to me is comparable to the synthesis of Buhuri Karrashfi. He adds, this sea is marked by duality, divided into two distinct parts. When observed closely, it manifests as waves rising to exceptional heights. Each wave rises higher than the last, in a perpetual and increasing ascent. Within this vastness, I perceive a radiant streak piercing through the center of the waves, splitting them in two, like a lance cutting through their essence and establishing this separation. He continues, there is a lance emitting an exceptionally intense light. I saw this lance tear the waves in two and simultaneously split the sea. One part of the sea moves to the right, while the other moves to the left. The right side takes the form of the letter Kaf, and the left side takes the form of the letter Nun. Within the lens that separates them, I perceive the manifestation of the letter Kaf, Thus, in my synthesis, as I contemplate bhri karrashfi, a verse comes to me. إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. When he wills a thing, he only says to it be, and it is. He concludes, at that moment, I contemplate the greatness of the Lord through my study. As I delve deeper into this greatness, still focused on the supreme name, Ismu Zati, an unusual reality appeared to me, one I had never seen before. I saw it descend into the sea. This reality, both in the Nuraniyu, luminous framework, in the Ruhaniyu, spiritual framework, and in the very framework of the vision that I had never perceived before, descended into the sea like a revelation rushing into the unfathomable immensity.
li tàbbi te miinuma ko
What fell into the sea is unusual and resembles no light, yet I believe its profound nature is luminous. Who has already attempted to solve such an enigma? Something falls into the sea, never appearing to me as a light, and yet its intrinsic reality reveals itself to be luminous. He questions its origin, and it is gradually revealed to him until a finality manifests in reality. It is then that he is told it is an emanation from al-Haqa'iq al-Munzil. In his dialect, he expresses his revelation with the phrase bimunzil, using a metaphor for lack of an immediate reference to which this new reality could be attached. He then declares, "Never before had I contemplated such a light. Driven by astonishment, I questioned, is it truly light? And I was answered, its nature is undeniably luminous, although you have never perceived it as such. Yet never have I seen such light." In his questioning, he receives the answer. This light comes from al-Haqa'iq al-Munzil. From then on, he affirms that I will name this reality with the definition bimunzil. The moment when the light fell into the sea was a singular instant. This light illuminated the sea in a way that no language could fully describe. For the waves, which until then were observed in their usual appearance of moving water, ceased to manifest as such. Their nature metamorphosed. They were no longer simple waves, but became impetuous torrents, like those floods that project themselves upwards, rising until the inner vision can no longer grasp them. Then, in a reverse movement, they fell back towards the depth, coming to crash onto the pedestal where the spear that had once split the sea into two pointed. This is how he observed the phenomenon, in a setting where light had transformed the sea. Pushing this gaze beyond appearances, he reached a perception where the ozone presented itself to him as a mirror. His soul, immersed in the divine realms, had projected itself there in reality, oscillating between these two spheres until one had the impression that the divine realms and the divine reality had unified into one. What was at the origin of the fusion of these two dimensions is the singular light, bimunzil. Thus, he turned to the Quran with a new interpretation of the verse, Qaba Qawsaini aw Adna. For now he perceived this proximity established by Allah, an elusive proximity that transcended all ordinary understanding. He contemplated this sparkling light within himself, a light that remained captive within itself, with nothing escaping from it. When this light blazed up, generating torrents, the vision became clearer. one could distinctly see the sea and the spear that had pierced it, as previously described. The two parts of the sea, formerly separated and whose nature had been metamorphosed by light into impetuous torrent, then began to gradually recompose. What had been fragmented regained cohesion until the whole erected itself into an existence. This existence manifests itself through an intrinsic duality, presenting two distinct aspects. One, inaccessible to inner vision, remains in shadow. The other, where inner vision manages to extend, shines with light. Thus, it is described as an upright light, whose face perceivable through inner vision is illuminated, revealing itself in all its clarity, while the other face, located beyond the field of this perception, takes on the appearance of a shadow. However, a certainty remains for the one who contemplates it. Although this supreme existence seems endowed with two opposing faces, they actually form only one and the same entity. This is why he turned once more to the Quran, taking it up again with the same quest. And since his point of reference was Allah, he undertook to search among the pages those that resonate most with his inner vision. Thus, he became aware that his perception found a particular echo in these words, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Qul huwa Allahu Ahad. From then on, he deduced Bimunzil Ahad. For the light he perceives is the very one that has deployed until reconstituting the whole of reality, to such an extent that what he formerly considered as a simple metaphor had been transmuted, revealing a two-phase structure. One located behind remains inaccessible to his perception. This is why he designates it as the dark side, because his inner vision cannot pierce its mystery. What lies behind remains veiled, protected by a form of shadow. The other face, on the other hand, consists only of light, and it is this one that stands before him, fully revealing itself to his gaze. He then observes that, despite the apparent distinction of the two faces, he actually perceives only a single unit existence. Then he declares, as I had taken Allah as my starting point, I will return to the Quran. Thus he realizes that Allah has propelled him to the very heart of the Quran, revealing to him these words, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Then the Surah Al-Ikhlas through the statement, Qul huwa Allahu Ahad. He then draws a striking conclusion, and in profound wonder, he affirms Bimunzil Ahad. But he still has no confirmation. Why? Because the space in which he finds himself is the divine realms, a domain where his peers coexist, but also his spiritual master, whose rank far exceeds his own. Thus, everything he perceives before he can express or relate it must first be confirmed, for he evolves in a space that belongs to another. It is at this moment that his mind then questions, who could interpret this manifestation for him? For the reality he perceives in connection with the Lord belongs to a distant dimension. He then seeks the one who can give him the interpretation. Thus a man emerges, clothed in imposing majesty, whose spiritual state reaches a supreme degree. His presence is so singular that the one who contemplates him could not say whether he emerges from the divine realms or whether he comes from the divine reality itself. Intrigued, he addresses this being of great stature by calling him by the name which in dialect used evokes a soul, more precisely, Ruhul Qudus. However, this appellation here does not have the usual meaning attributed to Ruhul Qudus. Its usage in this context is specific to this dialect and carries a particular nuance. It is then that he questions him under the envelope of this Ruhul Qudus on the question, where does this being come from? And the man answers him, I come from Janibul Kauni. Yet the space where the questioner stands in his inner vision reveals no world named Janibul Kauni. Similarly, when he peers into the distance, he distinguishes no world corresponding to this appellation. The being then declared to him, I come from Janibul Kauni. He stood before him, resplendent, his radiant beard illuminating his face, his red cloak floating with presence, and his turban radiating such intense light that it seems to reflect what he had glimpsed in his inner vision. This light, whose origin he has never been able to determine and which he had named Al-Haqa'iq al-Munzil, seemed to manifest itself again before him through the turban of this majestic being. Seized by the moment, he expressed this man in these terms, I would like to obtain confirmation on what I perceive in my vision in order to truly understand the true nature. The man then replied, come, I will gather for you all metaphors and dialects into a single framework. If you pronounce it, the one you face will deliver to you the confirmation you seek. This confirmation, which is none other than the very existence you observe. Then he continued by asking him, do you have the term Allah with you? He replied, yes. Then the man said to him, give it to me. He handed it to the man, and the man solemnly declared, Allahumma salli ala buhurika rasfi bimunzil ahad. It is at this precise moment that he obtained his confirmation. It took form at the very moment when this being pronounced these words in his favor. It was then that a ball of light sprang forth and was projected against his chest. It is at this moment that he fully became aware that he could continue what he was contemplating in his vision. For when this man uttered these terms, and this light penetrated his chest, the sea he had perceived until then, with its two faces opened again, but this time in a transfigured form. It recomposed itself in a new structure, taking on the aspect of scattered pearls dispersed.
mu gis formu perle.
He perceived them in the form of scattered pearls. When contemplated through inner vision, the entity manifesting with its two faces, one dark, the other luminous, appears to undergo a transformation. It adopts the semblance of droplets, yet not akin to water droplets. These droplets, as they fall, resemble glistening, pure diamond pearls. Gradually, they gather to form a mountain of pearls. At this stage, what occurred initially begins to repeat. He observes the pearls uniting progressively, as though bound by an invisible force into a harmonious whole. This union takes the form of a subtly woven rope composed of approximately 2,000 diamond pearls. Then a striking phenomenon occurs. Before his eyes, the pearls and rope synchronize to calligraph a word. The man gifted with inner vision through transcendent perception deciphers this word, which reveals three inseparable realities within him: fitri, Intrigued, he seeks to understand why this word took such form. Suddenly, two elements emerge from within the word, one from the ra, one from the fa, and the other from the ra. Each detaches from the center, carrying a unique pearl. In a striking motion, the pearl from the fa enters into his right eye, while the one from the ra enters his left eye. Upon their entry, his inner vision amplifies, unveiling deeper perspectives. At this precise moment, he realizes the face he once perceived as wholly luminous can now be decomposed into discernible nuances and scrutinized in essence. Simultaneously, the face he deemed dark reveals itself anew. It was not inherently dark, but shrouded by a shadow. A revelation strikes him. This darkness was the shadow of a hidden being behind that face. What he believed to be an impenetrable veil for his inner vision was not mere absence of light, but the presence of an entity whose shadow engulfed all. Focusing on what lies behind this face, he perceives a scene in metamorphosis. What he witnesses shifts before his eyes, yet even the past replays in his favor, as though history unfolds anew. Thus, he finally comprehends the true nature of the one concealed. The location of this majestic apparition becomes clear. A man emerges, cloaked in a red mantle, solemnly declaring he originates from Janibul Kauni. At this moment, another figure appears on the once shadowed side, radiant with dazzling light, robed in a luminous white jalaba, his resplendent beard illuminating his face. He recognizes Seydi Mouhamed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Certainly anchors within him, though this man is from Janibul Kauni, he is intimately tied to the Prophet. A bond unveiled only through heightened inner vision, yet all this stemmed from a single word inscribed before him, fitri. This word structure provoked his revelation. The fa projected into his right eye, while the ra surged into his left. This extraordinary phenomenon granted him not only the ability to perceive the past, but to interpret its profound meaning. As he contemplates the pearls and their subtle arrangement, a light from divine reality suddenly appears. This light does not merely manifest. It traverses space with extraordinary intensity and unfathomable speed, spanning billions of kilometers in an instant. None could grasp its essence, measure its power, or apprehend its velocity. The light takes the form of a flaming lance imbued with two distinct colors. When fully illuminated, it glows incandescent orange. When momentarily dimmed before reigniting, it radiates pure, dazzling white. Thus, the lance of light unfolds, revealing its transcendent intensity and speed. When this luminous lance manifests, it abruptly pierces the mountain of pearls with ruthless precision. At this instant, the word fitri, inscribed at the mountain's heart, becomes the impact point at the remaining letter. The lance split it into two with a sharp flash. This division extends to the mountain itself, cleaving it into two distinct halves, one positioned to the right, the other to the left. Peering into the split mountain, he perceives the red-cloaked figure he had seen earlier. This majestic being now sits solemnly at the center of the two pearls fragments. Observing closely, he noticed the red mantle draping harmoniously over the figure's silhouette, complemented by uniquely beautiful hair, enhancing his aura. Seated between the divided mountain halves, the figure occupies a central point of profound significance. Through inner vision, he continues scrutinizing the scene, invoking the term Ruhul Qudus, with its intrinsic meaning different from common Arabic understanding. He addresses it. Ruhul Qudus then speaks. Did you not see the letter Kaf in your projection earlier? He immediately nods. In response, Ruhul Qudus extends his right hand and declares, "Here is Kaf." Continuing, he asks, "Did you not see the letter Nun in your projection?" Again, he affirms. Ruhul Qudus now extends his left hand. "Here is Nun." Finally, he inquires, "Did you not see the letter Kaf in your projection?" He confirms once more. Ruhul Qudus then reveals, "The Kaf essentially represents my being." Thus, he comprehends the reality of Kun Fayakun. He realizes the guarantee of this creative power was entrusted by Allah to Ruhul Qudus. He understands the light that pierced and split the mountain was no mere phenomenon. It was a manifestation of this profound reality, an unveiling granting access to the one now seated at its center. Exclaiming with absolute certainty, he proclaims, "Since the inscribed word was fitri, and I have seen the light, I declare fitri binuri." Yet the scene continues. The being begins reuniting the two mountains halves divided by the luminous lands. Remarkably, he remains immobile, seated centrally. The holder of inner vision watches him extend his right hand towards the right mountain, designated by Qaf. Instantly, the mountain responds, drawn magnetically towards him. Then he extends his left hand to the left mountain, associated with Nun. It converges fluidly towards his left. A revelation erupts. He beholds this majestic being, whose essence is Kaf. He witnesses the being observed both mountains, unifying them within himself. What was separated merges into a single entity, the mountain and pearls now constituting this being. With majesty, the being addresses the holder of inner vision. This is what you call Nur, specifically Nur al-Mutalsam. Studying Nur al-Mutalsam is struck by a revelation. Though the being unified the mountains, his essence as Kaf persists. This perplexes him, compelling him to probe the mystery through infused knowledge. As he seeks understanding, a new spectacle unfolds. The mountain emits intense projection of light into the divine realm. Overwhelmed, he kneels before the Kaf symbolized being, perceiving a widening distance between himself and Ruhul Qudus. Aware his vision is fleeing, he implores an interpretation before it fades. The majestic being addresses him in a resonant voice. Wasalli ala fitri binuri kal talsamil anwar. Instantly he grasps the profound meaning. The being continues. Wasalli ala fitri binuri kal talsamil anwar. Reintroducing the Kaf essential to him. The holder of the vision, inner vision, plunges into an extraordinary mystical state. Despite this sublimity, the being solemnly reminds him, "Do not forget you are still immersed in deep study." He advises anchoring oneself in Allah to pursue further visionary quest.
mu jëlaat Allahu.
The holder of inner vision is in a mystical state. a spiritual condition that allows him to question Ruhul Qudus, whose appearance symbolizes the term kaf, about the true nature of his being. As he contemplates, Ruhul Qudus urges him to reveal the divine name he holds, which is Allah, the one who possesses inner vision and is immersed in the divine realm, then extends the supreme name that he carries within. This name manifests as light, fixed in his right hand. When he unfolds it, the supreme being, whom he perceives in his contemplation, draws this name through the force of his spiritual power. The divine name Allah, in response to this call, surges forth and enters the being in whom the mountains have been integrated into his essence. Once it arrives within him, this name manifests by emanating from his chest, tracing the words Allahu huwal haq, wal haq huwallah. In other words, the Ismu Zati, which the Supreme Being has drawn and integrated into him and which has settled in his chest, is transfigured into a new expression, Allahu huwal haq, wal haq huwallah. The possessor of inner vision contemplates it face to face. As his gaze fixes upon it, he observes it in its posture. Then, as the writing emerges and sparkles from his chest, the being, in the exercise of his spiritual power, appropriates what has been inscribed there. Allahu huwal haq, wal haq huwal la. With the gesture imbued with sovereignty, he divides the expression at its center before holding it in his hands. The holder of inner vision continues his observation with acuity, penetrating the mystery unfolding before his eyes. The being then extends the inscription once more in his hand, and immediately the letters metamorphose, engraving a new formulation, Nasiril Haki Bil Haki. Thus, the enigma that the possessor of inner vision strives to interpret is revealed. Did the expression Allahu huwal haq, wal haq huwallah give rise to Nasiril Haq Bil Haq? Or is it the other way around? This falls within the framework of marifa, spiritual knowledge, as it is a matter of deeply esoteric significance. Indeed, the possessor of inner vision remains in a mystical state, but Allah has granted him a system that allows him to draw from the resources of light contained within his soul to establish a connection with the divine reality, while remaining anchored in the divine realm. Thus, he establishes this connection and perceives a fawudat, spiritual effusion, emanating from the divine reality, specifically from the space where the mountain enveloped by Ruhul Qudus resides within his being, symbolized by the letter Kaf. It is from this place that the fawudat manifests. Immediately after the possessor of inner vision has fully immersed himself in the divine reality, the fawudat takes flight and he perceives its vibration, a transcendent effusion of light that travels to penetrate his soul. At that moment, he distinctly hears this fawudat pronounce a divine name he had never perceived in this reality before being introduced to it. This fawudat, composed exclusively of light and taking the form of a resplendent lance, proclaims with majesty, Ya Shafi. When he hears this powerfully striking divine name, he questions within himself and declares, I use the name Allah, and it is this being, Ruhul Qudus, who took it from me before inscribing on his chest, Allahu huwal haq wal haq huwallah. Then, when he extended his hand again, I saw another writing appear, Nasiril Haq Bil Haq. I then sought to connect to grasp its meaning in the realm of Marifa, and it was at that moment that a name was revealed to me through this fawudat chanting, Ya Shafi. Faced with this succession of mystical events, he questions himself with increasing intensity, what is happening? At the very moment he formulates this question to interpret the revelation, he perceives a phenomenon of unparalleled depth. The being he was contemplating in his inner vision begins to metamorphose once more, manifesting a new state of his transcendent reality. The mountain of pearls once generated by the being begins to gradually dissipate. First, the one on the right dissolves, followed by the one on the left, undergoing the same process of erasure. Then, he observes another phenomenon. The writings, such as the kaf and other symbols, also begin to transform. Each one changes before his eyes, revealing a subtle and elusive dynamic. Just as he thinks this metamorphosis is complete, a new vision seizes him. He sees again what he had launched at the very beginning, at the precise moment he was commanded to extend his hand to project it. What he had launched resurfaces, and simultaneously, everything at the center unites to inscribe a single word, radiant with light and majesty. Allahu. Now his gaze no longer discerns any familiar form. He perceives no anthropomorphic presence, no jamadat, inanimate objects, no mountain, no Quranic writing, no ayat. Everything he had seen before has faded, and only one manifest reality remains. What he had seen in this realm, now transfigured into Allah, is precisely what he had held in his hand earlier. Faced with this revelation of unfathomable depth, the possessor of inner vision kneels at the heart of this divine realm. He then asks, "By this supreme name, I implore that the synthesis communicate to me the meaning of what I have just experienced." He proclaimed this, completing it with a prostration. However, absolute silence envelops him. No response comes. He repeats it again with increased intensity. The one who holds inner vision, immersed in the divine realm, expresses himself thus: "From my beginning, I initiated this journey with this name, Ismu Zati Allah. I carried it here, traversing each stage, witnessing all the transformations and metaphors unveiled to me. I delved into the depths of infused knowledge so that it might enlighten me, and it indeed helped me. However, certain realities were interpreted for me through Marifa, revealing a meaning I had not yet grasped. Everything I had previously contemplated and described, the mystical seas, the Quranic words, the symbolic letters, the postures of this being, the names I heard for the first time, Janibul Kaun, as well as that of Seydi Ahmed, peace and blessings upon him, and his posture, all of this manifested before me in the language of signs and revelations. And yet, despite the immensity of these visions and the diversity of these manifestations, only one reality remains. A single term stands before me with brilliance and majesty: Allah. He prostrates once more, imploring that the interpretation of what he has just experienced be revealed to him. It is then that a deep, resonant voice echoes within him, addressing him with these profound words: Al-Khalq, kulluhum mazairullah. He instantly understands what he sees. By taking the name Allah to meditate on the Lord, he realizes that all these manifestations he perceived were in reality a manifestation of God, through the contemplation of the Caliph of Allah he was observing. At that precise moment, he tells himself that his inner vision is now complete. He thinks he can focus on another aspect, but the voice resonates again within the mystery, for the mystery is nothing but a manifest presence of the entity Allah. He perceives this voice originating simultaneously from within the alif, the lam, and the ha. However, he cannot precisely identify who is speaking. He only hears the voice without form or contour. The voice then addresses him with these words: "If we decipher for you the term Al-Kal Kulluhum Mazahirullah, we will bring you to experience what you have truly lived. What had I truly experienced? It replies. The voice responds again with infinite clarity. You have experienced the reality of Nasir al-Haq bil-Haq Shifayatullahi. Allahu Akbar. Listen carefully to what has been revealed to him. You have lived the reality of Nasir al-Haq bil-Haq Shifayatullahi. Through this, the ultimate purpose of the name Allah has been unveiled to him in all its splendor. At the moment the possessor of inner vision hears these words, he sinks once more into a deep mystical state. He wonders, amazed and perplexed. All that I have experienced while contemplating these mysteries has brought me to this stage. I must then continue my journey on this path of contemplation. I do not intend to limit myself here. Thus, he contemplates Allah once more, opening his inner vision again to engage anew in the mystery.
As he continued to contemplate the divine name Allah before him, guided by mysterious and diffuse voices, one of these voices resonated within him, commanding him to recite a specific number of times. When he inquired about the nature of this recitation, the mysterious voice replied, "Recite in the name of your Lord the word that is about to resonate." The essential point at that moment was to understand that, in the same way the mysterious voice had ordered him to perform this zikr, recite in the name of your Lord, his mind immediately recalled the Quranic verse. And the words once revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, echoed in his mind. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq. This was the understanding he grasped through the command. However, he asked about the nature of the recitation, adding, "For when I came here, I knew only one term, Allah, and it is through him that I am able to contemplate these mysteries. And since I have stayed in this wondrous place, I have heard only one divine name, the one that resonated with the luminous fuyudat, distilling the sound, Ya Shafi. Thus, between these two names, which one should I recite?" The being seated within the name Allah informed him that, to achieve this, he would connect him to the angelic realm in a space where specific angels are permitted to recite this invocation, so that he could join them in their zikr. The holder of inner vision replied, "I remain attentive." At that very moment, he saw the being, whose voice resonated within the name, release a ball of light from the alif of Allahu. This ball ascended along a path until it reached heights inaccessible to his inner vision, and suddenly it burst like a thunderbolt, scattering. Some of the luminous fuyudat descended to merge into the divine reality within the name Allah, while others dispersed into the divine environment where he was situated. Radiant beams from the ball then surged to create an intermediary space in the angelic realm, Alamul Malakut. Connected to this space, the visionary heard the creatures of Alamul Malakut. He observed how these angels were closely gathered and meticulously aligned, their wings gently touching one another in a splendid seated posture. He noticed that, in their unique nature, these angels possessed a double oral opening, one mouth with a tongue on the front of their head, and another similar one on the opposite side. Some of them had 1,000 heads, others 100, and those with the fewest had no less than 50 heads. Their wings were structured in numbers of 50,000, 1,000, and those with the fewest had at least 100. What intrigued him in his vision was the harmonious way they were firmly fused and interwoven in their seated position, like clusters of leaves from a mysterious tree. He perceived them with manifest clarity and detected the sound of their voices, resonating in unison with a remarkable tone.
Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif.
He listened again to this wondrous dhikr.
Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif.
Once more, he listened intently.
Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif.
And marveled at what he witnessed. The being seated within the Ismu Zati then addressed him. Have you not now heard and discovered the name? Proceed with the recitation using the customary number that has been granted to you. He asked, what customary number? For the being had only mentioned the customary number without specifying the actual figure. In response to his question, a ball of light emerged from the letter Ha'un of Allah, forming a particular inscription, Bilutfi. Along this inscription, he saw each of its letters, reflecting a number above it, except for one. On the Ba, he perceived the number 9. On the Fa'un, the number 1. And on the Lam, he saw the number 2. Assessing the structure of these three letters, Fa'un, Lam, and Ba, and measuring them against the scale of infused science, he finally understood that the number 129 constituted the customary number, derived from the digits 1, 2, and 9. Wondering how he would count this, the majestic being of the Ismu Zati, with his piercing voice, advised him to count using his fingers. The holder of inner vision then turned his fingers, folding them one after another at the end of each recitation, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, until he completed the customary number. However, he was struck with amazement upon reaching the 129th recitation, for he suddenly heard the mysterious voice of the being declaim a verse he recognized. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَنْ يَقُولَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونُ. Surah 36, verse 82. He noticed the unique resonance of the word kun. At that precise moment, the holder of inner vision felt a special light integrate into him, boosting this mystical spiritual strength and power, enabling him, for the first time, to probe the content of the letter alif, the lam, and the ha'un. His vision, although spiritual, was so intense that he could even feel the essence of these different entities, comparable to a man viewing a lamp until he feels the incandescent heat of the latter project itself on his eye, causing tears. Amid this intense sensation of heat, the visionary became concerned about the potential risk of this luminous amplification melting his being. As he pondered this, the voice of the being resonated once more. For the first time, he was able to discern the contours of his face and recognize this being, designated as Ruhul Qudus. His message was, you have been granted the Fathu. The great opening, Fathul Kabir, has been bestowed upon you. At the end of this announcement, the holder of inner vision addressed him again, asking Ruhul Qudus to teach him what the Fathul Kabir was. The majestic being replied, I will condense it for you into a single term that encapsulates everything you have contemplated, along with the zikr you have performed. He revealed the reality. بِلُطْفِ لَطِيفٍ كُنْ فَتْحُ. Following this sublime and mysterious teaching, he then witnessed the beginning of a substantial metamorphosis within Ruhul Qudus. The alif dissolved to take form of a sea. The lam did the same, as did the ha'un. However, each of these oceans had an owner.
ndekete géej gu nekk dafa am borom.
Each of these seas is inhabited by an entity. It contemplates the vastness of the sea that the alif has shaped. This is how he perceives the sea, bubbling under the brilliance of its water, to the point where the effervescence reaches such intensity that it would burst the human eye, the zahir state, if one attempted to endure its vision. This sea is animated by waves that rise beyond reality, reaching dizzying heights and immeasurable grandeur. They seem to water the divine realm itself before resuming their perpetual motion. Through this demonstration of the sea, the holder of inner vision discerns an entity emerging with power, majesty, and light that transcend all scales of measurement. This being stands with such imposing stature that the possessor of inner vision cannot discern its head. Thus, through its manifestations, tajalliyat, it gradually transforms so that the holder of inner vision can grasp it. It is deduced that if this being had retained its initial form, even the one with inner vision could not have witnessed its appearance. This being walks within the sea of alif, observed by the inner visionary. It is clothed in a pristine white jalaba, topped with a red cloak, adorned with 12 buttons. 2 of these buttons are located at its knees. Under the careful observation of the inner visionary, the bubbling continued up to its chest. This is how the observer precisely counts 12 buttons on his cloak, marking the way this being has revealed itself. With its radiant beard and a turban of dazzling beauty, emitting a light that illuminates and floods its face, the being advances majestically. The holder of inner vision continues to contemplate it as it walks in the sea of alif, treading the waves with its feet and allowing them to follow their perpetual rhythm of rising and falling. Its movement seems directed towards the divine realm. The being continues its ascent until it approaches the divine realm, where the holder of inner vision stands. Upon reaching proximity, it addresses him and says, "Do you know who I am?" The holder of inner vision replies, "You are the majestic being whom, to my understanding, I have always called Ruhul Qudus." The being then asks a second question, "Do you know my name?" The holder of inner vision immediately responds, "No, no, I do not know your name." The being replies, "I have 19 names, but among these 19, take the one by which I am universally known. I will reveal the other 18 to you, but first remember the one that is universally recognized." The holder of inner vision asks, "What name is it?" The being responds solemnly, "Sheikh Ahmed At-Tijani Sharif." Then he extends his hand and declares, "Whoever drinks from the sea of the alif to know the Lord Allahu, the same name is Muzati that you have brought, must necessarily pass through me. Everything in the sea of alif, everything in the sea of the alif, attributed to a gnostic, arif, proceeds from me." The holder of inner vision then eagerly asks, "Who is it?" The being with unshakable majesty replies, "Me, Sheikh Ahmed At-Tijani Sharif." The holder of inner vision, deeply moved, exclaims, "Since you have granted me immense spiritual opening, Fathu, through the zikr I have chanted, namely Ya Latif, and since your sublime name, which have just revealed to me, precedes the 18 others you wish to make known to me, grant me the first time to praise this name before you continue." The being then stands in the sea of the alif, listening with absolute attention. The holder of inner vision raises his voice in a song of praise. "Alhamdulillah Mawlai al-Arashil, الشيخ الكرسي أحمد الله التيجاني البسط الشريف الكنوز. What the holder of inner vision sought to express was his own understanding, a spiritual structuring that allowed him to introduce the terms Arash, Kursiyu, Bast, Allah, and Kunuz. For, although he had received a name, Sheikh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, and was aware of it, he knew that a direct assimilation of this name, in all its depth, was neither immediate nor evident. This is why, in his praise, he ordered the appellations in a specific manner: Mawlaya, Sheikh, Ahmed, Tijani, and finally, Sharif. Indeed, this majestic being, walking in the sea of the alif, embodied a transcendent reality. From then on, the holder of inner vision asked to receive its ultimate synthesis. Thus, the being led him even deeper, through his inner vision, into the spheres of the divine realm, where it infused him with the remaining 18 divine names. The holder of inner vision received them all and added them to the first name revealed, Sheikh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, thus completing the set of 19 names. Then, in an act of submission and gratitude, the holder of inner vision addressed the being and declared, "By your will, I will do everything in my power to exalt and praise each of these 18 names with the consideration they deserve." The Supreme Being then replied, "Since the name Ismuzati is a sea, and each sea has an owner, wait, I will touch your face to strengthen your inner vision, so that you may see the one who resides in the Lamb and is preparing to come. From there, a reality well known to the elect manifested, a reality so intense that when it occurs, it overwhelms the being like a form of divine hypnosis. It is the same effect produced by the contemplation of a luminous arrangement, whose perfect organization fascinates to the point that the observed being ultimately captivates the observer entirely. This is precisely what happened to the holder of inner vision in the presence of Mawlaya Sheikh Ahmed Tijani Sharif. He observed it with such intensity that he gradually forgot that the alif, the lam, and the ha were each a distinct sea, each with its own owner. His mind was entirely absorbed by the sea of the alif and the immensity of the opening granted to him. At that precise moment, he could only express what he deeply felt and what was inspired in him at that time. For when the soul reaches certain spiritual states, it can only utter what is dictated to it. It is in this dynamic that when he proclaimed, Alhamdulillah Mawlai al-Arashil, Al-Shaykh al-Kursi, Ahmadin Allah, Al-Tijani al-Bast, Al-Sharif al-Kunuz, he affirmed that these words had been inspired to him. When asked why, he simply replied, because when one reaches certain states, one can only say what one is commanded to say. However, to avoid focusing exclusively on this aspect to the point of forgetting that the seas are in perpetual motion and that each has an owner, the being placed his hand on the face of the holder of inner vision. Through this gesture, he instructed him to turn his gaze toward the owner of the sea of the Lamb and ordered him to undertake an in-depth study of the one who resides within it. Intrigued, the holder of inner vision asked, "How can I conduct this study?" The being replied, "If I left you only with your inner vision, you would not be able to study the one in the sea of the Lamb. But wait, I will entrust you with something." Eager for understanding, the holder of inner vision immediately inquired, "What is it?" The being then responded with gravity and mystery, "I will transmit my secret to you. a secret that encompasses my 18 names, and when added to the one you already know, forms a total of 19 names. This secret is Sirul Kubra.
ca la tàllal loxoom
Moulay Sheikh Tijani extended his hand and entrusted the holder of inner vision with the secret known as Sirul Kubra. As soon as he took possession of it, the latter acutely perceived that this secret contained within it the entirety of the 19 names of the Master. Such a grand revelation could only awaken in him a profound questioning. What use should he make of this treasure of immeasurable significance? Moulay Sheikh, in his infinite wisdom, then instructed him to chant each of these names once. Obeying this secret injunction, he began the recitation, and immediately his perception were transcended. Before his eyes opened, an ethereal sea corresponding to the letter Lam, whose absolute clarity revealed even the unsuspected depths of its essence. This sea, of such pure clarity that no veil could alter its transparency, presented itself to him as a vast expanse of divine knowledge. As he contemplated this celestial immensity, his gaze was suddenly captivated by the presence of writings, elusive to the profane eye. He then understood that the goal was not merely to linger on the movement of the luminous waves, but to access the mystery contained within the sacred inscriptions, nestled at the heart of the spiritual sea. This realization marked the moment when he grasped the full depth of Sirul Kubra, which had revealed itself to be the key that allowed him to access this transcendent vision. Diving deeper into his contemplation, he finally discerned the divine letters inscribed in the sea of Lam.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallim ala ayni rahmati rabbaniyati wal yaqutati al mutahaqiqati ha'itati bi markazi al fuhumi wal ma'ani wa nuri al akwani al mutakawwinati al adami sahibi al haqqi rabbani al barqi al asfa'i bi muzuni al arbahi al mali'ati li kulli muta'aridin min al buhuri wal awani wa nurika al-lami'i alladhi malakta bihi kawnaka ha'itati bi amkinati al makani. اللهم صل وسلم على عين الحق التي تتجلى منها أرس الحقائق عين المعارف الأحوم صراطك طام الأصخم. اللهم صل وسلم على تلحة الحق بالحق كنز الأعظم إفادتك منك إليك إهتة نور المتلسم صلى الله عليه وعلى آله صلاة تعرفنا بها إياه.
No sooner had he uttered these words from a distance than he saw an angel already present in his immediate surroundings, reciting this celestial refrain in a pleasantly fantastical melody.
اللهم صل وسلم على عين الرحمة الربانية والياقوتة المتحققة الهائتة بمركز الفهوم والمعاني ونور الأكوان المتكونة الأضمي صاحب الحق رباني البرق الأسطاء بمزون الأرباح المالعة لكل متعارض من البهور والأواني ونورك اللامع الذي ملكت به كونك الهائتة بأمكنة المكان. اللهم صل وسلم على عين الحق التي تتجلى منها أرس الحقائق عين المعرف الأقوم صراطك طام الأطم. اللهم صل وسلم على تلأة الحق بالحق كنز الأعظم إفادتك منك إليك عاتة النور المتلسم صلى الله عليه وعلى آله صلاة تعرفنا بها إياه.
What is most captivating lies not only in the angel's chant, whose melodious voice and inimitable articulation transcend any attempt at imitation, but rather in the being who manifested through these recitations. This being of unparalleled majesty, clad in a radiant white jalaba, shone with a light so intense that no human eye had ever beheld its like. His garment, woven not from ordinary threads, but from luminous rays, defied all material perception. No thread was visible, for every seam was replaced by a pure emanation of light. His presence was striking. The sharp cut of his jalaba perfectly framed his shoulders, with no irregularity disturbing the harmony of his silhouette. Its length, expertly tailored, extended gracefully along his body and stopped just above his heels, never touching the sea. Each of his steps released luminous flashes, whose intensity generated mystical waves within the sea of Lam. To behold his stature was enough to grasp the incomparable holiness that resided within him. His eyes, akin to the luminous beams of celestial projectors, dazzled those who met them. His beard radiated light, while the most fascinating aspect of his hair lay in its supernatural configuration. Each strand hung in a mysterious balance, suspended in mid-air by a void filled with light. His nails, of dazzling purity, reflected the same perfection as his fingers. When he smiled, the entire universe seemed to bow under the effect of this divine beauty, causing a fusion between the heavens and the earth. Simply inhaling his fragrance evoked immeasurable bliss, for this exquisite trail was imbued with a celestial essence. The mere act of contemplating him, observing his radiant forehead, glowing beard, and luminous hair, constituted a spiritual ecstasy. The sublime being thus described originates from the sea of Alif and that of Lam. Although his arrival is expected from the sea of Lam, his profound essence stems from the owner of Alif. For the one who possesses inner knowledge by the grace of the Sirul Kubra knows that the master of the sea of Alif, Mawlaya Shaykh Ahmed Tijani, draws from the infinite ocean of the sea of Lam, the domain of the Prophet Seydi Ahmed sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thus, when this being appears in all his splendor, holiness, light, mercy, and unparalleled fragrance, the Hadaratul Ilahiyya honors him with the Tayyib al-Mutayyab, a divinely blessed perfume. His hospitality is such that, without uttering a word, any discerning being instantly understands that he is the best of all creation. His poised gait fascinates with its perfect balance. He does not seek to slow his pace, but his natural stride is imbued with solemn majesty, revealing unshakable determination, total commitment, and immutable character. This gait, far from being ordinary, bestows blessings upon the entire universe. When his steps resonate on the sea of Lam, their echo revitalizes and infuses new strength into all that exists around him. When he approaches the holder of inner vision, the one who possesses Alif intercepts him to present him using the Surah Yasin. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Yasin wal Quran al Hakim. Through this recitation, Mawlaya Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif introduces the one he reveals, affirming that the mystical provision he brings is nestled in another sea, a sea glimpsed in the distance, engulfing the reality of Ha'un, which is about to unveil itself. The Prophet Seydi Ahmed sallallahu alaihi wasallam plunged his hand into the vastness of the sea he ruled, the sea of Lam. revealing immediately the sea born from the explosion of the Ha'un of Ismuzati. Under his guidance, the waves of this sea rose, advancing majestically, not in the form of watery expanses, but rather as waves of light, devoid of any material consideration. These luminous waves, resembling a mat that folds and unfolds, precisely evoked the delicate movement of a wistful cloth spread during zikr sessions, being carefully folded. In other words, what is perceived as the water of the sea is in reality a manifestation of pure light, which by folding and unfolding intensifies its brilliance with each movement. As the sea progressed, approaching the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he solemnly declared, "This is my gift." At the very moment of this proclamation, a sphere of light emerged from this sea and exploded with immeasurable intensity. Were it not for the secret of the great opening that Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani had sealed within the Sir al-Kubra, the names would have remained beyond comprehension. But from that moment, a count began, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ revealed to us, "I have 201 names, and each one constitutes my name." He continued, "You heard me earlier when Shaykh Tijani called me Yasin. But know that I'm also Ahmed, Muhammad, Taha, Khalilur Rahman, and so on, up to 201 names." When Seydi Ahmed uttered these words, light emanated from his mouth with each word, making the experience of listening to him ineffable. It was like savoring, in a perpetual manner, the quintessence of delight, the most exquisite of all pleasures that a being could ever taste. At that moment, Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, the holder of the sea of Alif, this exceptional being, addressed Seydi Ahmed with reverence and care. Seydi Ahmed is a witness to all. Then, speaking directly to him, he added, "O Seydi Ahmed, you heard me command the holder of inner vision to call me Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif. And he also sang praises to my name. O sublime being, you have made me your right hand, your khatmiya. Grant me the grace to glorify your greatness." Seydi Ahmed acquiesced to this request, opening the way for him to glorify his greatness. Witnessing this sacred moment, I stood ready to transcribe these chants, to etch them into eternity. It was then that Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani plunged his hand into his sea of Alif and drew out a tablet of light. At that instant, a truth was revealed to me. Although the holder of inner vision had contemplated all that resided in the sea of Alif, Shaykh Tijani had still veiled secrets within it. For this secret, no one could unveil it except by the permission of Shaykh himself. Finally, after extracting this tablet of light from the sanctuary of his Alif, Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani, with the sacred assent of Seydi Ahmed, declared with unparalleled majesty,
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أخلق والقاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم.
Immediately, the angel who had once chanted the Jawharatul Kamal in the presence of the holder of inner vision reappeared. He recited the Salatul Fatiha once more, with a voice of immeasurable beauty, extraordinary resonance, and such exquisite harmony that no creature could articulate it with such celestial flavor.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والقاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم.
At that moment, the holder of inner vision, seized by this revelation, turned to Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif and, with solemnity and deep humility, extended his hands, making this request: O Sayyidi, I implore you to grant me the grace to chant what you recited for Sayyidi Ahmed. Furthermore, I ask you to establish its practice as an obligation, equivalent to the number of names Sayyidi Ahmed declared as his own, which is 201. It was precisely at this moment that the spiritual education rooted in the recitation of the 201 Salat al-Fatiha began. Thus, when you are instructed to recite these 201 Salat al-Fatiha as part of your spiritual education, and out of ignorance, consider that 10,000 invocations would be superior to this number, it is because you are unaware of the sacred source where this number was sealed. These 201 Salat al-Fatiha, prescribed in the Dahiratul Iman, whether before or after initiation into the word, are not mere ritual formulas. They were guaranteed at the very moment when Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, immersed in his sea of alif, received the emanation of Sayyid Ahmed, who, from his sea of lam, manifested these 201 names. It was at that instant that the holder of inner vision sought permission to chant the sanctified names 201 times, following the structure of the Salat al-Fatiha as transmitted by Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif. And thus, in the radiance of the oceans of light, Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, the custodian of ultimate secrets, granted him this supreme authorization. After this, Seydi Ahmed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the reality of his sea of light, remained perpetually veiled by unfathomable mysteries, as the origin of the 201 names, emerging from a sphere of light, was scrutinized. Suddenly, another luminous sphere emerged and exploded, revealing yet another secret, hidden within the veils of Sayyidi Ahmed. With each explosion, a being of extraordinary beauty appeared, standing in silence. Then a second sphere of light emerged, exploded, and another being of prodigious strength emerged, maintaining absolute calm. Just as the holder of inner vision was about to question their nature, another luminous sphere emerged and exploded, revealing a being of indescribable wisdom and beauty, who also remained silent. Before the question could even form in his mind, another sphere of light emerged, and a being with a radiant forehead appeared. Troubled by this revelation, the holder of inner vision addressed Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, seeking to unravel the mystery of these beings emerging from the veiled realities of Sayyidi Ahmed. But Mawlana Shaykh responded enigmatically, "Do not mere question them, but rather sing their praises." The holder of inner vision then asked, "How should I exalt them?" Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani then transmitted the sacred words, وَعَلَىٰ آلِهِ سِرُّ الْكُبْرَى. Then, lifting the veil of these enigmatic presences, he declared, "These are the companions, but you possess the Sirrul Kubra, which will allow you to contemplate all these realities." Thus, the holder of inner vision finally understood the nature of the successive manifestations. The first sphere of light exploded and gave birth to Abu Bakr. The second revealed Omar. The third unveiled Usman. Finally, the fourth unveiled Aliyun. In a sudden illumination, he realized that the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, long before their earthly incarnation, had already seen their commitment, will, and mission guaranteed and sealed in the sea of light. All that transpired afterward in the physical world, their adherence to Islam, their struggles, their sacrifices alongside the Prophet ﷺ, etc., was merely the materialization of pre-established reality. Thus, when it is said that Abu Bakr joined the prophetic mission at a specific moment, or that Omar, Osman, and Ali committed at determined times, all of this was the realization of a decree already sealed. The Khulafa al-Arba, the four rightly guided caliphs, had their souls guaranteed from the moment Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was in the sea of Lam. At that instant, Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani uttered these sacred words, وَعَلَىٰ آلِهِ سِرُّ الْكُبْرَى. Then, turning to the holder of inner vision, he declared, "To reward you for the honor you have just bestowed upon my companions, I will place my right hand on your head and utter, Ya Shafi, Ya Shafi, the name you already perceived within yourself." As soon as Seydi Ahmed placed his hand on the holder of inner vision's head and uttered the divine name Ya Shafi, the latter felt a transcendent illumination, confirming what he had always sensed. Then, Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, continuing this sacred transmission, proclaimed with solemnity, Fayakun, as a complement to what he had already chanted earlier. إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن. Carried by the brilliance of this revelation, the holder of inner vision addressed Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani and said, "Since you have revealed to us the nature of the seas and the depth of these realities, teach us now their ultimate purposes." At these words, Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, the custodian of ultimate secrets, replied, "If you wish to know their purposes, I will proceed to decode them for you."
Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani niko,
Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani said to him, "For the decryption, the divine name Allah that you brought, and through which you sought to interpret the signs of Allah, is the Ismu Zati, which is Allah." He then clarified, "If you deepen your analysis, everything you perceive of Allah, as well as its synthesis, until you grasp the divine mysteries, will inevitably lead you to the manifestation of three C's. The first C symbolizes the alif. It is there that you heard a word you had never perceived before, an expression revealed under the name of Salatul Fatiha. The second C is that of the Lam, where Seydi Ahmed ﷺ revealed what had propelled him to manifest the C, known as Jawharatul Kamal. Finally, the third C is that of the Ha, from which Seydi Ahmed manifested his 201 names, as well as the Khulafa al-Arba, the four caliphs. At the end of this synthesis, Mawlay Shaykh Ahmed Tijani said to him, "There is a word we mentioned at the beginning. I will assign it a name to connect it to your favor." The holder of the inner vision then asked him, "What name should we give to this expression we used from the start?" Shaykh Tijani Sharif replied, "We will gather it so that you may name it Salatul Buhuri, and I will grant it to you." The inner visionary asked, "What exactly is Salatul Buhuri?" He replied, "It is precisely within this same framework where you study your Lord, your Creator, through the lens of Allah's science. The interpretation dictated to you by the metaphors and sentences revealed by the universes led you to hear a coded language, a secret universe that I had designated to you as the place from which I emerged, commonly called Janibul Kawn." Shaykh Tijani continued, "Subsequently, we will go there together. But to synchronize Janibul Kawni with the divine framework in which you operate, it was necessary for this salawat to be included in the specific language we mentioned, a dialect whose expressions are codified." The holder of the inner vision then asked him, to teach him this science. Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani instructed him to extend his hands to transmit the authorization and offer it to him as a gift. Thus, the holder of the inner vision extended his hands, and Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani recited, Allahumma salli ala buhurika rashfi bimunzil ahad, wa salli ala fitri binurika talsamil anwar, nasir al-haqq bil-haqq shifayatullah, bilutfi latifin kun fathu, wa ala alihi sirrul kubra bishafi fayakun. From that moment, the inner visionary felt he had reached completion. Indeed, all the words Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif had pronounced in this salawat were perfectly arranged, and none were missing in the organization of the universes and the revealed metaphors. However, he had never imagined that these words could constitute a salawat, now known as Salatul Buhuri. In this context, three realities, haqiqah, were thus unveiled. The haqiqah of Salatul Fatiha, originating from the sea, whose holder is Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, symbolized by the alif. The Jawharatul Kamal, also originating from the sea, upon which the Prophet Seydi Ahmed walked and which propelled him, represented by the sea of the Lamb. Finally, in the sea of the Ha, the 201 names of the Prophet and his four rightly guided caliphs, Khulafa al-Arba, were revealed. Also, let us remember that Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif, from the divine realm and the divine reality where we were, mentioned a world called Janibul Kawni and revealed to the holder of the inner vision the existence of its 18 other names, as well as the dialects already expressed and their process that allowed the genesis of Salatul Buhuri. This is why, when asked to synthesize, he intoned, Allahumma salli ala buhurika rashfi bimunzil ahad, wa salli ala fitri binurika al-talsamil anwar, nasir al-haqq bil-haqq shifayatullahi, bilutfi latifin kun fathu, wa ala alihi sirrul kubra bishafi fayakun. It became evident to him that their discussion had generated other essences that would necessarily serve the souls who would later engage in the path of education and spiritual journey. But at that precise moment, the purposes of this earthly world did not interest them. They were still in the divine realm. Yet, they fully knew that these mystical tools and essences generated would necessarily serve the future inhabitants of the earth. These are mainly Salatul Fatiha, Jawharatul Kamal, the 201 names of the Prophet, the 19 mystical names of Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani, and Salatul Buhuri, which would be indispensable in the spiritual formation of souls. Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani Sharif then addressed the holder of the inner vision as follows. All that we have just decrypted about the three luminous sources, as well as the manifestations of Tajalliyat, the mystical transfigurations that occurred at the beginning until reaching a purpose on the Ismuzati, the reason for their advent is justified by your commitment to seek and discover the reality of the Lord through the Ismuzati. And as you studied the Lord within the Ismuzati, in addition to the extra benefit of having known me, Mawlana Shaykh, as well as the discovery of Salatul Fatiha, Jawharatul Kamal, the knowledge of Seydi Ahmed ﷺ and his names, the discovery of his four companions, up to the ultimate gift, that is Salatul Buhuri. Since you have already used the light of Allah to reach this level, without even using all its power and depths, for the essence of the Ismuzati encompasses realities so profound that when you journey through it until reaching a purpose, in reality, you are plunged into a new beginning without end. Say, if the sea were ink for writing the words of my Lord, surely the sea would be exhausted before the words of my Lord were exhausted, even if you brought the like of it in addition. Surah 18, verse 109. This is an example similar to this parable announced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that His signs and His revealed names are like a drop of water from a needle dipped in an infinite ocean. The remaining quantity is His endless realities, and the realities of Allah manifest thus. This is why Mawlana Shaykh Ahmed Tijani reminded the holder of the inner vision, adding, "Since you have not grasped the depths of the reality of the name Allah, despite the many spiritual benefits you have derived from it, I will indicate to you another mystical name, that of Rahman, so that you may engage in a new quest to learn about the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. We will therefore begin a new phase of study through His name, Rahman."